In this video, we are not talking about how to escape pain. We're going to explore something far more powerful, why pain controls you, and how to end that cycle permanently. By the end, you'll know how to walk through life without fear of betrayal, criticism, or abandonment. You'll learn how to make your soul a place no one can invade again. There is a fundamental error in how most people interpret their pain. They believe it comes from the outside. They believe that the betrayal of a lover, the humiliation at work, or the cold indifference of a parent is the cause of their suffering. But the truth is far more complicated and far more liberating. Pain does not arise from external events themselves. It arises from the interpretation of those events, from the unconscious content we've inherited and suppressed throughout our lives. In this way, the origin of emotional wounds lies not in the world, within the psyche. From the moment we are born, we begin forming a map of the world, based on how we are received. A child does not rationalize neglect. They absorb it. They internalize it as meaning, not action. I must be unlovable. The nervous system learns to associate attention with safety and withdrawal with danger. These formative patterns become embedded, not as ideas, but as emotional truths, unconscious and automatic. They do not sit quietly in the back of the mind. They animate the entire perception of reality. When someone ignores you later in life, it is not them who caused the hurt. It is the echo of that childhood wound being activated. You are not reacting to the present. You are bleeding from the past. The psyche, when it does not understand itself, becomes its own prison. We repeat relationships and circumstances that mirror our wounds, because the unconscious seeks not peace, but integration. What is repressed does not die, it returns again and again through people and situations that seem to hurt us. But they are not random. They are mirrors. They reflect the parts of us we refuse to look at. For example, if you carry the silent belief that you are fundamentally not enough, then any situation, no matter how trivial, that hints at rejection will feel catastrophic. You might find yourself obsessing over a missed text, a disapproving glance, or a perceived tone of voice. These small moments trigger something enormous, the stored emotional charge of years of self-abandonment. What hurts is not the glance or the silence. What hurts is the meaning you've unconsciously attached to it. I'm not worthy. I'm being left again. I'm invisible. The person in front of you may be a stranger, but they've just activated the same wound your parent, teacher, or first love once did. This mechanism is why healing cannot be achieved merely by changing your environment. You can leave a toxic partner, move to a new city, or even meditate for hours a day, but if the unconscious programs remain intact, the pain will simply find a new doorway in. Your wounds are not waiting in the world. They are stored inside the structures of your own psyche. This isn't to say that others aren't responsible for their actions. Betrayals, abuses, and neglect are real. You're continued. Suffering does not come from the fact of what happened. It comes from the interpretation you've carried into the present. Pain persists when it is unexamined. When it is seen, named, and understood, it begins to dissolve. Not because the event didn't matter, because its grip on your identity weakens. Many people confuse emotional wounds with weakness. They think, if I were stronger, I wouldn't feel this way. But this is a lie sold by a culture that values performance over depth. Sensitivity is not fragility, it is information. Your pain is telling you where you've been disconnected from others, and more importantly, from yourself. To ignore it is to deny your own truth. To face it is to reclaim your power. At the root of every emotional wound is a story you've unconsciously agreed to. Stories like, I must be perfect to be loved, or if I'm vulnerable, I'll be abandoned, or my worth depends on others' approval. These narratives aren't just thoughts. They are energetic structures that shape how you see the world. And because they are unconscious, you mistake them for truth. When someone acts coldly toward you, you don't say, they're having a bad day. You say, of course, this always happens to me. That belief is not fact. It is programming. This is why even positive feedback or healthy relationships can feel uncomfortable to someone who hasn't faced their wounds. When your nervous system is wired for chaos, calm feels suspicious. When you are used to abandonment, genuine connection feels dangerous. Your emotional body will resist healing until you confront the origin of your pain, not in others, but in yourself. The most painful truth is also the most liberating one. You are not suffering because of what they did. You are suffering because of what it awoke in you. The external event is just the trigger. The real wound is internal and has always been there. You are not broken, you are layered. And those layers hold your history. Not just the visible parts, but the unseen, the unheard, the forgotten. The shadow is not a monster hiding beneath the bed. It is a mirror buried deep in the unconscious, reflecting every trait, impulse, and desire you have rejected, denied, or deemed unworthy. It is not evil in itself, it only becomes dangerous when ignored. In truth, the shadow is your greatest source of strength, authenticity, and protection, if you have the courage to face it. And until you do, you remain vulnerable to emotional manipulation, psychological control, and the piercing pain of others' judgments. The parts of you that you disown are the very parts others use against you. Most people do not realize how much of their personality is shaped by avoidance. They act kind to avoid conflict. They shrink themselves to maintain approval. They suppress their anger to appear virtuous. On the surface, they seem composed. But underneath is a storm of repressed emotions waiting to be triggered. The moment someone crosses a line or challenges their identity, this carefully constructed self begins to collapse. Why? Because they've outsourced their power to the persona, a social mask crafted to be acceptable, not whole. When you disown your shadow, you are fragmented. You walk through life with only half of yourself, one half presented to the world, the other hidden even from your own awareness. But the psyche is not built for division. What you suppress does not vanish. It festers, it gains intensity in the darkness, and then, through projection, it begins to control your perception. You start to see your disowned qualities in others, their arrogance, their selfishness, their coldness. In truth, what you hate in them is what you fear within yourself. This is how people hurt you, not by creating wounds from nothing, but by stepping on landmines you've buried. A simple criticism can feel like an attack if you have not accepted your own flaws. A confident person can make you feel invisible if you have not embraced your own potential. You are hurt not by the event, but by the internal resistance it exposes. The world becomes a threat when you are at war with yourself. Shadow integration changes this entirely. When you face your darkness consciously, you remove the hooks others can use to manipulate you. Imagine someone trying to shame you for being selfish. But you've already accepted that you have selfish impulses, and that they are part of your humanity. The insult loses its power. It slides off you like water off stone. You don't need to defend or attack. You simply know. And in that knowing, you are untouchable. This is not the same as indulgence. Integrating your shadow doesn't mean acting on every dark impulse. It means acknowledging it, understanding it, and choosing consciously how to respond. The person who has faced their rage is not more violent, more peaceful, because they no longer fear being overtaken by it. The one who has embraced their inner narcissist is less manipulative, because they no longer need constant validation. It is the fear of the shadow, not the shadow itself, that causes destruction. The truth is that your shadow holds your boundaries, your intuition, your raw power. When you deny it, you become passive, pliable, and easy to control. People can walk over you because you haven't embodied the part of you that says, no. You can't assert yourself because you've labeled strength as aggression or ambition as selfishness. Once you reclaim these disowned traits, they become tools, not weapons. They protect your inner space from invasion. They allow you to navigate the world with clarity and force, not anxiety and confusion. The reason you feel drained after certain conversations, ashamed after certain interactions, or devastated after a breakup is not because you're weak. It's because you haven't integrated the aspects of yourself that could have protected you. When your self-worth depends on being liked, loved, or validated, you hand over your psychological armor to others. If you have embraced your full self, your fears, your flaws, your fire, then nobody can use them against you. There's no weakness to exploit, no insecurity to press on. The integrated self is not perfect, but it is whole. It does not need to be constantly on guard, because it has nothing to hide. The opinions of others may still arrive, but they no longer penetrate. Criticism becomes feedback, Rejection becomes redirection. Pain becomes insight. You don't need to pretend to be flawless because you have stopped pretending at all. You are not invulnerable because nothing can touch you. You are invulnerable because everything that can be touched has already been claimed, owned, and healed. The shadow becomes your shield, not your shame. There is a deep and often invisible architecture to suffering, and it begins with the need for external validation. From early childhood, we are taught, through rewards, punishments, praises, and silences, that our worth is not inherent, but conditional. We internalize the idea that how we are seen determines how valuable we are. This sets the stage for a life of dependency, not on people as companions, but on people as mirrors. We begin to outsource our sense of self to others. What they think, how they respond, whether they accept or reject. This is the root of powerlessness. External power is seductive. It promises safety through control. If only I can get them to like me, approve of me, love me, then I'll finally feel secure. This model is inherently unstable. It requires constant maintenance, endless negotiation of identity, and the exhausting performance of being enough. The more you depend on others to affirm your existence, the more fragile that existence becomes. Any disapproval feels like annihilation. Any abandonment feels like death. You are not reacting to reality. You are reacting to a loss of self. This is why people become manipulable. When your value lies in someone else's hands, you will do anything to keep it there. You will betray your needs, your boundaries, your voice. You will shrink your desires, tolerate mistreatment, and silence your instincts. You will compromise your truth for the illusion of connection. But this connection is never real. It is built on a false self. And every time you uphold it, you drift further away from your center. Inner authority is the antidote to this illusion. It is not loud, not aggressive, not flamboyant. It is quiet, rooted, unwavering. It comes from knowing who you are, not based on reaction, but revelation. It is the slow, painful, liberating process of peeling back every layer of identity that was created to please, protect, or prove. It is the courage to stand in front of a world that constantly demands your conformity and say, I no longer need your permission to exist. To reclaim your inner authority, you must first recognize where you've given it away. Look at the areas of your life where you feel anxious, resentful, or confused. These are signs of a fractured center. You might be seeking approval from someone who never sees you, competing in a game you never chose, or chasing goals that were never your own. This dissonance is not failure. It is feedback. It tells you that your life is being authored by someone else's script. True freedom begins when you decide to write your own. This does not mean rejecting others or isolating yourself. It means reversing the hierarchy, placing your inner compass above the opinions and expectations of the world. It means understanding that nobody can give you what you have not yet given yourself. Not love, not respect, not peace. These must arise from within, or they will forever be held hostage by external circumstances. When inner authority is reclaimed, the entire landscape of experience shifts. Rejection no longer defines you. It reveals the misalignment. Criticism no longer wounds. It clarifies. Praise no longer intoxicates. It is received but not required. You move through life with a deeper trust, not in the environment, but in your ability to remain whole regardless of it. Relationships become more honest because they are no longer transactions of validation. Work becomes more meaningful because it is no longer a performance. Solitude becomes nourishing because you are no longer running from the void. The noise of the world may still exist, but it no longer dictates your tempo. You listen, but you do not obey. You care, but you are not controlled. The irony is that once you no longer need external power, you become truly powerful. Not in the sense of dominance or superiority, but in the way a mountain is powerful, immovable, silent, alive. People can project onto you, misunderstand you, even attack you, and yet you remain intact. Because your identity is not built on their perception. It is built on presence. The journey toward inner authority is not linear. It requires the death of illusions, the idea that someone will save you, that one more success will complete you, that approval equals safety. These illusions must be confronted, grieved, and released. In their place grows something far more durable, a self that is not dependent, not desperate, deeply anchored. a self that no longer chases acceptance because it has already accepted itself, a self that no longer fears disconnection because it is already connected to something deeper than opinion, its own undeniable truth. There comes a point in inner work when a quiet transformation takes place. It doesn't announce itself with triumph, nor does it demand recognition. It emerges slowly, silently, like the dawn that breaks not with sound, but with light. This transformation is the birth of psychological wholeness, the state in which nothing and nobody can truly hurt you anymore, not because you have become cold or hardened, but because you have become complete. You are no longer fragmented, no longer searching for missing parts in other people. You have ceased to be a house with open doors for ghosts of the past to enter. You have remembered who you are entirely. Psychological wholeness is not perfection. It is not the absence of pain, nor the end of challenges. It is the unshakable clarity that whatever arises within or around you, you have the internal structure to hold it. You are no longer ruled by triggers because you have sat with every wound and brought it back into the circle. You are no longer destabilized by rejection because your self-worth is not built upon external affirmation. It is born from within and reaffirmed by your presence alone. Pain may still visit, it cannot destroy. Disappointment may still arrive, but it cannot collapse you. You feel fully, yet you remain rooted. This strength does not come from resistance. It comes from radical allowance. You have allowed yourself to grieve what was never given. You have sat in silence with your shame, without running, without justifying. You have stopped negotiating with your past and instead turned inward to meet every abandoned part of yourself with honesty and compassion. You no longer flinch at the memory of pain. You no longer tense when someone sees your vulnerability. There is nothing left to hide, nothing left to defend. That is what makes you invincible, not armor, authenticity. When you are whole, relationships shift. You no longer seek people to fill a void. You no longer tolerate dynamics that require you to fracture yourself to be accepted. Your standards are not born from pride, but from self-respect. You can love fully without attachment because you know that your value does not diminish in someone else's absence. You can listen without absorbing, give without overextending, speak without fear of being misunderstood. You are no longer entangled in the emotional chaos of others because you are no longer looking to them to define your inner peace. People often imagine invincibility as being untouchable, above emotion, immune to feeling. The true invincibility is the opposite. It is the ability to feel everything without being consumed. It is the spaciousness to let grief move through you without clinging to it. It is the courage to cry without believing that crying makes you weak. It is the presence to be in discomfort without abandoning yourself. There is immense power in not needing to be all the time. Wholeness means you can experience the full range of the human condition without being fragmented by it. This state is not granted, it is earned, not by pleasing others or mastering external achievements, but by turning toward the very things you once ran from. It is forged in the fires of discomfort, in the moments when you chose self, truth over conformity, when you said no even though you feared being unloved, when you told yourself the truth, even when it shattered your illusions. Wholeness is the reward for those who stop chasing completion in the world and begin remembering it within themselves. A person who is psychologically whole can still be disappointed, but not devastated. They can still be hurt, but not shattered. The insults and betrayals of others do not find soil in them, because there is no longer fertile ground for shame to grow. They have already faced the accusations they once feared. You are too much, not enough, unworthy, unlovable. And they have met each one not with denial, with inquiry, and in doing so have dissolved their power. Now when such words are thrown at them, they fall like pebbles on solid ground. They do not penetrate, they do not define. This is what it means to be truly safe, not because the world is predictable, but because your inner landscape is known to you. You do not need to manipulate reality to avoid discomfort. You do not need to control others to feel secure. You carry your sanctuary within. You are no longer pulled by emotional currents, because you have learned to swim in your own depths. The chaos outside does not mirror chaos within, because your house is in order. You have excavated the ruins of your past and built something stronger. Not a fortress, but a foundation. When you are whole, you stop asking the world to be gentle with you. You stop hoping others will be careful with your heart. You still value kindness. You still cherish connection, but your survival does not depend on it. You are no longer a beggar at the gates of love, but a sovereign being who can give and receive freely without fear of loss. You know that nothing real can be taken from you, because you no longer abandon yourself to keep others close. You carry yourself through all seasons, through all storms, and you know deeply that no matter what happens, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again in the way they once could. The journey to a place where nothing and nobody can hurt you again is not one of avoidance. It is one of deep inner reclamation. It does not ask you to escape the world or numb your emotions, but to meet yourself fully. To stand in the rubble of your abandoned parts, your silent grief, your denied power, and begin the slow, deliberate work of integration. You learn to stop fearing pain by understanding it. You stop running from your shadow and instead turned toward it, listened, and invited it in. What once haunted you now protects you. What once weakened you now empowers you. The parts of you that broke are now the strongest parts, not because they are perfect, but because they are real. When you reclaim your inner authority, you no longer look outward to know who you are. You no longer negotiate your truth in exchange for temporary comfort. You become someone who no longer begs the world to treat them gently, because you have learned how to hold yourself fiercely. You know what you feel, you know what you need, and you no longer apologize for existing. Psychological wholeness is the shield. It is the silent power that makes you unshakable, not because you won't feel life's weight, but because you will no longer collapse under it. You will bend, but you will not break. You will weep, but you will not lose yourself. You will love, but never abandon who you are again. This is not about becoming invulnerable to pain. It is about becoming invulnerable to being defined by it. You are no longer at the mercy of others' approval. You are no longer chained to old stories, old wounds, or old fears. You are whole. You are sovereign. You are free. And in that freedom, in that quiet, grounded knowing, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again.